All right, today we're tackling a technology that isn't just on the horizon, it's already here, and it's changing our world at a truly breathtaking speed. We're talking, of course, about generative AI. And it really has felt like an explosion, right? I mean, think about it. Just a little while ago, tools like ChatGPT were kind of these niche demos for tech insiders. Now, they're household names. The speed and the sheer scale of this rollout, it's just unlike anything we've really seen before. It feels like it went from the lab to our laptops and phones, well, almost overnight. And look, this is not just hype. We've got the numbers to prove it. By the middle of 2024, something like 40% of all Americans had already used a generative AI tool. Just let that sink in for a second. That is a staggering adoption rate. It really grounds this kind of abstract technology in a very concrete reality. This stuff is already woven into the daily lives of millions of people. Okay, so let's dive right in. To really get a handle on the promise and the peril, we first got to understand what's even in this new AI toolkit. What are the actual engines driving this whole revolution? So at the heart of it all, there's this frantic race to build bigger and more powerful large language models, LLMs. You've definitely heard the names: GPT-4, Gemini, Claude. These are basically the massive data-hungry brains behind all the chatbots and assistants that we're all getting so familiar with. And these tools have just leaped from the research lab straight into the professional world, and with incredible speed. I mean, in 2024, a whopping 78% of software developers were already using AI tools. And get this, 65% of US companies had already integrated generative AI in some capacity. That is just a massive leap in a ridiculously short amount of time. But hey, it's not just about text, right? The other huge piece of this puzzle is the rise of AI that can create media. We're talking about stunningly realistic images, video, even audio, all generated from just a simple text prompt. Think tools like Stable Diffusion or DALL. And the scale here, it's mind-boggling. To give you some perspective, just one tool, Stable Diffusion, had already been used to generate over 12.5 billion images by 2024. Billion. This isn't just some new cool feature, it's a literal torrent of new creative content flooding the internet. Okay, so we've established it's huge, and it's moving incredibly fast. But what can it actually do for us? You hear generative AI called a double-edged sword all the time, right? So let's start by looking at one side of that blade, the incredible promise and all the opportunities it's creating. Really, it boils down to 4 key areas where this tech shows some unbelievable promise. We're talking about major boosts to our productivity, augmenting our own creativity, making the world more accessible and inclusive, and even, believe it or not, accelerating fundamental scientific breakthroughs. There's this great quote from OpenAI's Sam Altman that just nails the whole productivity gain idea. He calls it a calculator for words, and that's such a perfect way to put it. The whole point is that the AI handles all the repetitive, tedious stuff, drafting emails, summarizing long docs, which frees up our brains for the higher-level strategic and creative work. And this potential in science, it's brilliantly illustrated by something called AlphaFold 3. So this is an AI model that can predict the structure of molecules, which has always been a massive, fundamental challenge in biology. By doing this with just incredible accuracy and speed, it basically acts as a giant force multiplier for researchers. It's dramatically speeding up the hunt for new drugs and biotech solutions. It's a total game changer. But that's only half the story, isn't it? For every one of those incredible promises, there's a potential peril. So now we have to look at the other side of that sword, the very real risks and the huge challenges that come with such a powerful new technology. And probably the most immediate tension, the one everyone talks about, is jobs. Right? Is AI going to be a tool that helps us, that augments our work? Or is it going to displace us? On the one hand, there's the optimistic view. AI just handles the boring stuff, freeing us up. But then you see this sobering estimate from researchers that about 30% of US jobs could have half of their tasks affected by this technology. And it goes way beyond just the job market. There are these other huge risks we absolutely have to confront. You've got the ease of creating deepfakes, which just pours fuel on the fire of misinformation. You have AI models that can inherit and even amplify our own human biases. There's a very real environmental cost from their massive data centers. And of course, the huge looming questions around our data and our privacy. And listen, these aren't just some abstract theoretical worries for academics to debate. The public is actively concerned about this stuff, and you can see why. Misinformation often tops the list of concerns, and we've already seen this play out in the real world. For instance, when that AI-generated audio clip mimicking President Biden was used to try and discourage people from voting. That makes the threat incredibly real, right now. And that environmental cost I mentioned, it is absolutely not trivial. Check out this powerful comparison from MIT researchers. Training just one large AI model can have a carbon footprint that's comparable to hundreds of transatlantic flights. Hundreds. And as millions of us start using these models every single day, well, that energy demand is only going to skyrocket. So here we are. We have this incredible world-changing promise on one side, and this really significant peril on the other. The crucial thing to remember is that the outcome here isn't set in stone. It's not predetermined. So the real question becomes, how do we navigate this crossroads? Let's take a look at how society, everybody from governments to entire industries, is trying to steer this thing in the right direction. And policymakers are definitely not just sitting on the sidelines. There has been a complete flurry of activity, honestly. We're seeing everything from a major presidential executive order on AI safety, all the way to more than 1,000 different AI-related bills being introduced in U.S. states. What's emerging is this really complex patchwork of rules around safety, labeling what's real and what's not, and basic fairness. And it's not just the governments either. Specific industries are hammering out their own rules of the road. I mean, the most high-profile example has to be Hollywood, right? The big writer and actor strikes in 2023, they resulted in these landmark contracts that now give creators actual control over how AI is used with their work, with their voice, and with their likeness. But at the end of the day, for AI to ever fulfill its incredible promise, it's going to need one thing above all else: public trust. And frankly, we have a long, long way to go on that front. Just take a look at a really high-stakes field like healthcare. A full 60% of Americans say they'd be uncomfortable if their own doctor relied on AI for their care. That gap, the one between the tech's potential and where public acceptance is today, that might just be the single biggest hurdle we need to clear. So here's the bottom line. Generative AI is here. It's not going away. The real question we have to ask ourselves isn't if we're going to use it, but how. Are we going to steer it to become a tool that augments our very best qualities, our creativity, our intelligence, our incredible capacity for discovery? Or are we going to let it amplify our worst flaws, our biases, our divisions, and our capacity for deception? That choice, well, that choice is ours to make.